A statue of Francesco di Marco d'Attini stands in the Piazza del Comune in the Italian city of Prato. He was a famous medieval textile merchant. And I have come to visit the city, famous for the fabrics it produced for centuries. Prato lies in Tuscany, close to Florence, and not far from the coast. I thought it would be a typical Mediterranean city, but now that I'm here, I find out that it's changed dramatically in recent years. One of the residents tells me an incredible number of Chinese have moved here. At first they came for the clothing industry, this woman explains. But at some point there were just too many of them. In this man's view, the Chinese are only concerned about money. It's their god, he says. I head to the west of the city, to Chinatown. I want to take a look at how the Chinese immigrants fit into this Italian city. The Chinese quarter has expanded rapidly over the past few years. Many locals say it's developed into a parallel society, a closed world that has little to do with Italy. I'm struck by how many expensive cars there are here. At least some of the Chinese immigrants must be making quite a lot of money and like to show it off. In various places I see Chinese graffiti. I lived in China for a few years, so I speak the language. Room to let, this says, in somewhat flowery language. And there's a telephone number. I suspect it may be a contact point for illegal immigrants.
The Chinatown in Prato is one of the biggest in Italy. Nobody knows for sure how many people are living here. Probably between 30 and 50,000. And at least that's what the Italian government thinks. Half of them don't have any valid papers. They are here illegally.
I want to ask some of the Chinatown residents about illegal immigration and about their views on integration.
哎，你好，问一下，我们是那个德国国际电视台的，做采访没问题吧？
But these aren't easy subjects, and many people just don't want to be interviewed for television. After quite a few rejections, I do then find some people prepared to talk, and more candidly than I expected. This man says there's black market labor in every country. If you don't give immigrants residency permits, they don't have any other choice. When I arrived, I didn't have a visa either, this man says. He tells me that people smugglers helped him get here. There's no other way if you want to leave China. This man says these problems have to be solved by the Italians. The immigrants are powerless to do anything. I set off for the industrial part of the city. I've read newspaper reports about areas where all the factories are Chinese, and that they're little better than sweatshops, exploiting illegal immigrants, forcing them to work in terrible conditions. Pronto Moda is the label on the clothing made here, fast fashion. I've tried for days to interview one of the Chinese owners, but they all say they don't have time. Today I give it a final attempt, although I'm aware of how unwelcome I am.
No, non voglia, capito? Prima devo sentire a me, capito? Non puoi fare così. Voleva sentire a me, capito?
I decide to leave it, and I'm relieved when I get out of the area. I didn't feel good being there with my camera equipment. I take a look at an Italian clothing factory. This city's whole history is bound up with the textile industry, but now many locals find themselves out of a job. Fabric from Asia is just too cheap. I ask one of the workers here if he'd consider taking a job with a Chinese company. No way, he says.
The Chinese have a completely different culture, he tells me, and they don't mix with other nationalities. Renato Cecchi started up this factory more than 50 years ago, and he would have liked to cooperate with the Chinese, but he says they just don't play by the rules. Today I saw on TV, he tells me, that again some Chinese business people have been found smuggling in fabric. There need to be the same regulations for everyone. I go to the town hall to meet Prato's mayor Roberto Cenni. Cenni has held the office for 2 years now. He's the first conservative mayor in Prato for years. And one of his key concerns is the Chinese in the city. Chinese immigration has caused many problems, he says. Problems that have been ignored for too long. It would be different if we were just dealing with individual crimes, he says. But here we're talking about a whole organized illegal system, the illegal importing of fabric, refugees who are being exploited like slave labor. It's rather like Europe in the Middle Ages, he says. The next morning there's a police raid. Cenni's administration conducts regular checks on firms suspected of using illegal labor. For security reasons, I have to stay outside. But then I'm permitted to enter the factory. This is one of several thousand factory buildings in Prato. But the Prato police chief has placed some restrictions on which I can film. I'm not permitted to show the faces of the police officers, nor of the Chinese workers. Made in Italy is on the labels of the clothes made here. Of course, that's true, but they're made under very un-Italian conditions. At sewing machines like these, Chinese immigrants work for up to 16 hours a day. Most of them are completely dependent on the factory owners. Many are here illegally and, if caught, face deportation. They sleep in a boarded-off corner of the factory floor. I'm shocked by what I see. What's happening here looks like sheer exploitation to me. And there doesn't seem to be any hope of improvement on the horizon. I'm told there are simply too many clothing factories like these. Inspecting all of them just once would take the authorities here around 10 years. At the end of my stay in Prato, I returned to Chinatown. The feeling I'm left with is a kind of helplessness. Some of those who've been observing developments here call Prato an integration laboratory. If this is an experiment, then in my view, it's one that's failed.